2 Chronicles, chapter 1. Solomon worships at Gibeon. Solomon, the son of David, was strengthened in his kingdom, and Yahweh his God was with him, and magnified him exceedingly. Solomon spoke to all Israel, to the captains of thousands and of hundreds, and to the judges, and to every prince in all Israel, the heads of the fathers' houses. So Solomon and all the assembly with him went to the high place that was at Gibeon, for there was the tent of meeting of God, which Moses, the servant of Yahweh, had made in the wilderness. But David had brought the ark of God up from Kiriath-Jearim to the place that David had prepared for it, for he had pitched a tent for it at Jerusalem. Moreover, the bronze altar that Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, had made was there before the tabernacle of Yahweh, and Solomon and the assembly were seeking counsel there. Solomon went up there to the bronze altar before Yahweh, which was at the tent of meeting, and offered 1,000 burnt offerings on it. Solomon prays for wisdom. In that night, God appeared to Solomon and said to him,
"Ask what I shall give you."
Solomon said to God, "You have shown great loving kindness to David, my father, and have made me king in his place. Now, Yahweh God, let your promise to David, my father, be established. For you have made me king over a people like the dust of the earth in multitude. Now give me wisdom and knowledge, that I may go out and come in before this people. For who can judge this your people that is so great?" God said to Solomon,
"Because this was in your heart, and you have not asked riches, wealth, or honor, nor the life of those who hate you, neither yet have asked long life, but have asked wisdom and knowledge for yourself, that you may judge my people, over whom I have made you king. Wisdom and knowledge is granted to you. I will give you riches, wealth, and honor, such as none of the kings have had who have been before you, neither shall there any after you have the like."
So Solomon came from the high place that was at Gibeon, from before the tent of meeting, to Jerusalem, and he reigned over Israel. Solomon's riches. Solomon gathered chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, that he placed in the chariot cities and with the king at Jerusalem. The king made silver and gold to be in Jerusalem as stones, and cedars made he to be as the sycamore trees that are in the lowland for abundance. The horses which Solomon had were brought out of Egypt, and from Cui. The king's merchants purchased them from Cui. They brought up and brought out of Egypt a chariot for 600 pieces of silver, and a horse for 150. And so for all the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Syria did they bring them out by their means. Chapter 2. Preparations for the Temple. Now Solomon purposed to build a house for the name of Yahweh, and a house for his kingdom. Solomon counted out 70,000 men to bear burdens, and 80,000 men who were stone cutters in the mountains, and 3,600 to oversee them. Solomon sent to Huram, the king of Tyre, saying, "As you dealt with David, my father, and sent him cedars to build him a house in which to dwell, even so deal with me. Behold, I am about to build a house for the name of Yahweh, my God, to dedicate it to him, and to burn before him incense of sweet spices. and for the continual showbread, and for the burnt offerings, morning and evening, on the Sabbaths, and on the new moons, and on the set feasts of Yahweh our God. This is an ordinance forever to Israel. The house which I build is great, for our God is great above all gods. But who is able to build him a house, since heaven and the heaven of heavens can't contain him? Who am I, then, that I should build him a house, except just to burn incense before him? Now, therefore, send me a man skillful to work in gold and in silver, and in brass, and in iron, and in purple, and crimson, and blue, and who knows how to engrave all kinds of engravings, to be with the skillful men who are with me in Judah and in Jerusalem, whom David my father did provide. Send me also cedar trees, fir trees, and algum trees out of Lebanon. For I know that your servants know how to cut timber in Lebanon. And behold, my servants shall be with your servants, even to prepare me timber in abundance. For the house which I am about to build shall be great and wonderful. Behold, I will give to your servants, the cutters who cut timber, 20,000 measures of beaten wheat, and 20,000 measures of barley, and 20,000 baths of wine, and 20,000 baths of oil. Huram agrees to assist. Then Huram, the king of Tyre, answered in writing, which he sent to Solomon, "Because Yahweh loves his people, he has made you king over them." Huram continued, "Blessed be Yahweh, the God of Israel, that made heaven and earth, who has given to David, the king, a wise son, endowed with discretion and understanding, that should build a house for Yahweh, and a house for his kingdom. Now I have sent a skillful man, endowed with understanding, of Huram my father's, the son of a woman of the daughters of Dan, and his father was a man of Tyre, skillful to work in gold, and in silver, in brass, in iron, in stone, and in timber, in purple, in blue, and in fine linen, and in crimson, also to engrave any kind of engraving, and to devise any device, that there may be a place appointed to him with your skillful men, and with the skillful men of my lord David your father. Now therefore, the wheat and the barley, the oil and the wine, which my lord has spoken of, let him send to his servants, and we will cut wood out of Lebanon, as much as you shall need. And we will bring it to you in floats by sea to Joppa, and you shall carry it up to Jerusalem." Solomon numbered all the foreigners who were in the land of Israel, after the numbering with which David his father had numbered them. And they were found 153,600. He set 70,000 of them to bear burdens, and 80,000 who were stone cutters in the mountains, and 3,600 overseers to set the people at work. Chapter 3. Temple construction begins. Then Solomon began to build the house of Yahweh at Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where Yahweh appeared to David his father, which he prepared in the place that David had appointed, in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. He began to build in the 2nd day of the 2nd month, in the 4th year of his reign. Dimensions and materials. Now these are the foundations which Solomon laid for the building of the house of God. The length by cubits after the first measure was 60 cubits, and the breadth 20 cubits. The porch that was before the house, its length according to the breadth of the house was 20 cubits, and the height 120. And he overlaid it within with pure gold. The greater house he made a ceiling with fir wood, which he overlaid with fine gold, and ornamented it with palm trees and chains. He garnished the house with precious stones for beauty, and the gold was gold of Parvaim. He overlaid also the house, the beams, the thresholds, and its walls, and its doors, with gold, and engraved cherubim on the walls. He made the most holy house. Its length, according to the breadth of the house, was 20 cubits, and its breadth 20 cubits, and he overlaid it with fine gold, amounting to 600 talents. The weight of the nails was 50 shekels of gold. He overlaid the upper rooms with gold. In the most holy house he made 2 cherubim of image work, and they overlaid them with gold. The cherubim. The wings of the cherubim were 20 cubits long. The wing of the one cherub was 5 cubits, reaching to the wall of the house, and the other wing was likewise 5 cubits, reaching to the wing of the other cherub. The wing of the other cherub was 5 cubits, reaching to the wall of the house, and the other wing was 5 cubits also, joining to the wing of the other cherub. The wings of these cherubim spread themselves forth 20 cubits, and they stood on their feet, and their faces were toward the house. The veil and pillars. He made the veil of blue, and purple, and crimson, and fine linen, and ornamented it with cherubim. Also he made before the house 2 pillars of 35 cubits high, and the capital that was on the top of each of them was 5 cubits. He made chains in the oracle, and put them on the tops of the pillars. And he made 100 pomegranates, and put them on the chains. He set up the pillars before the temple, one on the right hand, and the other on the left, and called the name of that on the right hand Jachin, and the name of that on the left Boaz. Chapter 4. The bronze altar and molten sea. Then he made an altar of brass, 20 cubits its length, and 20 cubits its breadth, and 10 cubits its height. Also he made the molten sea of 10 cubits, from brim to brim, round in compass, and its height was 5 cubits, and a line of 30 cubits encircled it. Under it was the likeness of oxen, which encircled it, for 10 cubits, encircling the sea. The oxen were in 2 rows, cast when it was cast. It stood on 12 oxen, 3 looking toward the north, and 3 looking toward the west, and 3 looking toward the south, and 3 looking toward the east. And the sea was set on them above, and all their hinder parts were inward. It was a handbreadth thick, and its brim was worked like the brim of a cup, like the flower of a lily. It received and held 3,000 baths. The 10 lavers, candlesticks, and tables. He made also 10 basins, and put 5 on the right hand, and 5 on the left, to wash in them. Such things as belonged to the burnt offering, they washed in them. But the sea was for the priests to wash in. He made the 10 lampstands of gold, according to the ordinance concerning them, and he set them in the temple, 5 on the right hand, and 5 on the left. He made also 10 tables, and placed them in the temple, 5 on the right side, and 5 on the left. He made 100 basins of gold. The courts. Furthermore, he made the court of the priests, and the great court, and doors for the court, and overlaid the doors of them with brass. He set the sea on the right side of the house, eastward, toward the south. The instruments of brass. Huram made the pots, and the shovels, and the basins. So Huram made an end of doing the work that he did for King Solomon in the house of God. The 2 pillars, and the bowls, and the 2 capitals which were on the top of the pillars, and the 2 networks to cover the 2 bowls of the capitals that were on the top of the pillars, and the 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, 2 rows of pomegranates for each network, to cover the 2 bowls of the capitals that were on the pillars. He made also the bases, and the basins made he on the bases. 1 sea, and the 12 oxen under it. The pots also, and the shovels, and the forks, and all its vessels, did Huram his father make for King Solomon, for the house of Yahweh of bright brass. In the plain of the Jordan did the king cast them, in the clay ground between Succoth and Zeradah. Thus Solomon made all these vessels in great abundance, for the weight of the brass could not be found out. The instruments of gold. Solomon made all the vessels that were in the house of God, the golden altar also, and the tables with the showbread on them, and the lampstands with their lamps, to burn according to the ordinance before the oracle, of pure gold, and the flowers, and the lamps, and the tongs, of gold, and that perfect gold, and the snuffers, and the basins, and the spoons, and the firepans, of pure gold. And as for the entry of the house, the inner doors of it for the most holy place, and the doors of the main hall of the temple, were of gold. Chapter 5. The Ark enters the temple. Thus all the work that Solomon did for the house of Yahweh was finished. Solomon brought in the things that David his father had dedicated, even the silver and the gold, and all the vessels, and put them in the treasuries of the house of God. Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel, and all the heads of the tribes, the princes of the fathers' houses of the children of Israel, to Jerusalem, to bring up the ark of the covenant of Yahweh out of the city of David, which is Zion. And all the men of Israel assembled themselves to the king at the feast, which was in the 7th month. All the elders of Israel came, and the Levites took up the ark, and they brought up the ark, and the tent of meeting, and all the holy vessels that were in the tent. These did the priests and the Levites bring up. King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel that were assembled to him were before the ark, sacrificing sheep and cattle that could not be counted nor numbered for multitude. The priests brought in the ark of the covenant of Yahweh to its place, into the oracle of the house, to the most holy place, even under the wings of the cherubim. For the cherubim spread forth their wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubim covered the ark and its poles above. The poles were so long that the ends of the poles were seen from the ark before the oracle, but they were not seen outside. And there it is to this day. There was nothing in the ark except the 2 tables which Moses put there at Horeb, when Yahweh made a covenant with the children of Israel when they came out of Egypt. God's glory fills the temple. It happened when the priests were come out of the holy place, for all the priests who were present had sanctified themselves and did not keep their divisions. Also the Levites who were the singers, all of them, even Asaph, Heman, Jeduthun, and their sons and their brothers, arrayed in fine linen, with cymbals and stringed instruments and harps, stood at the east end of the altar, and with them 120 priests sounding with trumpets. It happened when the trumpeters and singers were as one, to make one sound to be heard in praising and thanking Yahweh, and when they lifted up their voice with the trumpets and cymbals and instruments of music, and praised Yahweh, saying, For he is good, for his loving kindness endures forever. That then the house was filled with a cloud, even the house of Yahweh, so that the priests could not stand to minister by reason of the cloud, for the glory of Yahweh filled the house of God. Chapter 6. Solomon blesses the people. Then Solomon said, Yahweh has said that he would dwell in the thick darkness. But I have built you a house of habitation, and a place for you to dwell in forever. The king turned his face and blessed all the assembly of Israel. And all the assembly of Israel stood. He said, Blessed be Yahweh, the God of Israel, who spoke with his mouth to David my father, and has with his hands fulfilled it, saying, Since the day that I brought forth my people out of the land of Egypt, I chose no city out of all the tribes of Israel to build a house in, that my name might be there. Neither chose I any man to be prince over my people Israel, but I have chosen Jerusalem, that my name might be there, and have chosen David to be over my people Israel. Now it was in the heart of David my father to build a house for the name of Yahweh, the God of Israel. But Yahweh said to David my father, Whereas it was in your heart to build a house for my name, you did well that it was in your heart. Nevertheless, you shall not build the house, but your son, who shall come forth out of your body, he shall build the house for my name. Yahweh has performed his word that he spoke. For I have risen up in the place of David my father, and sit on the throne of Israel, as Yahweh promised, and have built the house for the name of Yahweh, the God of Israel. There I have set the ark, in which is the covenant of Yahweh, which he made with the children of Israel. Solomon's prayer of dedication. He stood before the altar of Yahweh in the presence of all the assembly of Israel, and spread forth his hands. For Solomon had made a bronze scaffold, 5 cubits long, and 5 cubits broad, and 3 cubits high, and had set it in the midst of the court, and on it he stood, and kneeled down on his knees before all the assembly of Israel, and spread forth his hands toward heaven. And he said, Yahweh, the God of Israel, there is no God like you, in heaven or on earth, you who keep covenant and loving kindness with your servants, who walk before you with all their heart, who have kept with your servant David my father that which you promised him. Yes, you spoke with your mouth and have fulfilled it with your hand, as it is this day. Now therefore, Yahweh, the God of Israel, keep with your servant David my father that which you have promised him, saying, There shall not fail you a man in my sight to sit on the throne of Israel. If only your children take heed to their way, to walk in my law as you have walked before me. Now therefore, Yahweh, the God of Israel, let your word be verified, which you spoke to your servant David. But will God indeed dwell with men on the earth? Behold, heaven and the heaven of heavens can't contain you. how much less this house which I have built? Yet have respect for the prayer of your servant, and to his supplication, Yahweh my God, to listen to the cry and to the prayer which your servant prays before you, that your eyes may be open toward this house day and night, even toward the place where you have said that you would put your name, to listen to the prayer which your servant shall pray toward this place. Listen to the petitions of your servant and of your people Israel, when they shall pray toward this place. Yes, hear from your dwelling place, even from heaven, and when you hear, forgive. If a man sin against his neighbor, and an oath is laid on him to cause him to swear, and he comes and swears before your altar in this house, then hear from heaven, and do and judge your servants, bringing retribution to the wicked, to bring his way on his own head, and justifying the righteous, to give him according to his righteousness. If your people Israel be struck down before the enemy, because they have sinned against you, and shall turn again and confess your name, and pray, and make supplication before you in this house, then hear from heaven, and forgive the sin of your people Israel, and bring them again to the land which you gave to them and to their fathers. When the sky is shut up, and there is no rain, because they have sinned against you, if they pray toward this place, and confess your name, and turn from their sin, when you afflict them, then hear in heaven, and forgive the sin of your servants and of your people Israel, when you teach them the good way in which they should walk, and send rain on your land, which you have given to your people for an inheritance. If there is famine in the land, if there is pestilence, if there is blight or mildew, locust or caterpillar, if their enemies besiege them in the land of their cities, whatever plague or whatever sickness there is, whatever prayer and supplication be made by any man or by all your people Israel, who shall know every man his own plague and his own sorrow, and shall spread forth his hands toward this house, then hear from heaven your dwelling place, and forgive, and render to every man according to all his ways, whose heart you know. For you, even you only, know the hearts of the children of men, that they may fear you, to walk in your ways, so long as they live in the land which you gave to our fathers. Moreover, concerning the foreigner, who is not of your people Israel, when he shall come from a far country for your great name's sake, and your mighty hand, and your outstretched arm, when they shall come and pray toward this house, then hear from heaven, even from your dwelling place, and do according to all that the foreigner calls to you for, that all the peoples of the earth may know your name, and fear you, as does your people Israel, and that they may know that this house, which I have built, is called by your name. If your people go out to battle against their enemies, by whatever way you shall send them, and they pray to you toward this city which you have chosen, and the house which I have built for your name, then hear from heaven their prayer and their supplication, and maintain their cause. If they sin against you, for there is no man who doesn't sin, and you are angry with them, and deliver them to the enemy, so that they carry them away captive to a land far off or near. Yet if they shall repent themselves in the land where they are carried captive, and turn again, and make supplication to you in the land of their captivity, saying, We have sinned, we have done perversely, and have dealt wickedly. If they return to you with all their heart, and with all their soul in the land of their captivity, where they have carried them captive, and pray toward their land, which you gave to their fathers, and the city which you have chosen, and toward the house which I have built for your name. Then hear from heaven, even from your dwelling place, their prayer and their petitions, and maintain their cause, and forgive your people who have sinned against you. Now, my God, let, I beg you, your eyes be open, and let your ears be attentive to the prayer that is made in this place. Now, therefore, arise, Yahweh God, into your resting place, you and the ark of your strength. Let your priests, Yahweh God, be clothed with salvation, and let your saints rejoice in goodness. Yahweh God, don't turn away the face of your anointed. Remember your loving kindnesses to David, your servant.